Welcome to Elizabeth's Stories. Today we follow May Jordan, a 7 to 8-year-old mother betrayed by her family who escapes a sinister plan, reclaims her freedom, and rebuilds her life with resilience. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly tales of courage and truth. Share your thoughts below. Let's start the stories. The house was never silent, not truly. Even at midnight, when the world outside held its breath, the walls of my son's home whispered secrets. The creak of floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint drip of a faucet somewhere deep in the plumbing, they were like voices, restless and watchful. I'd grown used to them in the 2 months since I'd moved in, my bones still aching from the hip surgery that had stolen my independence. But tonight, something else stirred in the air. Something sharper, colder, like a blade hidden in velvet. It wasn't the house. It was her. I sat on the edge of the guest room bed, my hands folded tightly in my lap, the thin cotton of my nightgown clinging to my skin. The clock on the nightstand glowed 12:43 a.m., its red digits pulsing like a warning. I hadn't meant to stay awake this late, but sleep had been elusive since I'd arrived here. My son Andrew's house was too pristine, too perfect with its polished hardwood floors and walls painted the color of bone. It felt less like a home and more like a stage, every corner arranged for an audience I couldn't see. I was a guest, yes, but not a welcome one. I'd known that for weeks, felt it in the way Sarah, my daughter-in-law, glanced at her watch when I spoke, or how Andrew's smiles never reached his eyes. But tonight, I learned just how unwelcome I was. The whisper came through the crack of the bedroom door, a sliver of shadow where the light from the hallway bled through. I'd left it ajar for the cat, a sleek gray creature named Cinder, who sometimes curled up at my feet, the only living thing in this house that didn't seem to resent my presence. I was about to call for her when I heard it. Sarah's voice, low and deliberate, curling like smoke. "Tomorrow, we'll lock her away." The words stopped my breath. They weren't loud, weren't meant for me, but they carried a weight that pinned me to the bed. My heart thudded slow and heavy as if it too were afraid to make a sound. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the mattress, straining to hear more. Andrew's voice came next, softer, almost reluctant. "Are you sure it's final?" "Final's what we need," Sarah replied, her tone as calm as if she were discussing the weather. "She's a liability now. The money's almost gone, and she's starting to ask questions. Tomorrow, we'll handle it." Quietly. I didn't move. I didn't dare. The air in the room felt thick, charged with something unnatural, as if the house itself were listening, holding its breath alongside me. My suitcase sat half-packed in the corner, a silent witness to my growing unease. I'd started folding clothes after dinner, not because I'd planned to flee, not yet, but because some instinct, some primal hum in my bones had told me to be ready. I'd ignored it for weeks, told myself I was being paranoid, that Andrew loved me, that he'd meant it when he said, "You'll be better off here, Mom. We'll take care of you." But love doesn't whisper plans to erase you. 2 months ago, I'd sold my cottage, a small, weathered place filled with memories of my late husband, of mornings spent tending hydrangeas, of evenings with a book and a cup of tea. It had become too much after the surgery. Stairs too steep, bills too heavy, loneliness too sharp. Andrew had been insistent, almost urgent. "Sell it, Mom. Let me handle the money. I'll invest it for you. You don't need the stress." I'd trusted him, wired the proceeds, $180,000, my life's savings, into his account, and moved into this house with its sterile walls and silent judgments. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to seem ungrateful, suspicious. I wanted to believe my son still saw me as his mother, not a burden. But belief is a fragile thing. It cracks under the weight of small slights, the way Sarah sighed when I asked for a second slice of bread, the way Andrew avoided my gaze at dinner, the way the children, my grandchildren, slipped past me in the hallways like I was a ghost. Tonight, I'd eaten alone in the kitchen, picking at leftovers from a plastic container while they went out just for an hour, as Sarah had said, her smile tight and practiced. I didn't mind the solitude, not really. I minded the way the house seemed to watch me, the way the air grew heavy when I lingered too long at the table. I stood slowly, my joints protesting, and moved to the door, pressing my ear to the crack. The hallway was dark, save for a faint glow from the staircase. Their voices had faded, but the words lingered sharp and cold. "Lock her away." The phrase echoed, and with it came a vision, unbidden, impossible. I saw myself in a room not unlike this one, but smaller, grayer, with bars on the windows and a lock that didn't open from the inside. The image wasn't memory or imagination. It felt like a warning, like the house itself was showing me what awaited. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it, but the chill in my chest wouldn't leave. I closed the door, locked it, and turned to the suitcase. My hands trembled as I folded my wool cardigan, the blue one with worn elbows, that Andrew had once said made me look too old. I added my papers, passport, medical records, a small notebook where I'd started writing things down, things I couldn't quite explain. Like the way the mirrors in this house never seemed to reflect me clearly, always blurring at the edges. Or the way Cinder would stare at empty corners, her hackles raised as if seeing something I couldn't. I dismissed it as age as exhaustion, but now I wondered if the house was trying to tell me something. Last week, I'd found something I wasn't meant to see. I'd been looking for batteries in Andrew's study, a room Sarah kept locked most days. The drawer was unlocked just for a moment, and there it was, a thick white envelope with my name typed neatly on the front. No return address. Inside were documents I didn't recognize at first. A power of attorney. I'd never signed financial withdrawals from an account labeled with my old cottage's address, a draft application for an assisted living facility with my name at the top. The signature on each was mine, but not quite close enough to fool a stranger. But the slant was wrong, the loops too tight. A practiced forgery. I'd returned the envelope without a word, my heart pounding, and lain awake that night piecing together the signs I'd ignored. The urgency to sell my house. The way Sarah took over my medications, insisting she'd organize them. The way Andrew handled every call with the financial advisor, waving away my questions with a smile. The whisper tonight wasn't the beginning. It was the end of a plan I'd been too trusting to see. The clock ticked to 1:15 a.m. I zipped the suitcase shut, my movements quiet but deliberate. The house seemed to hum now, a low vibration I felt in my bones as if it were alive watching. I slipped on my coat, the one I'd worn when I first arrived, and picked up my shoes, holding them in one hand to avoid making noise. The air felt heavier now, thick with intent, as if the walls themselves were urging me to go or warning me to stay. I couldn't tell which. I unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway. The house was dark, but not empty. Shadows moved where shadows shouldn't, flickering at the edges of my vision. I paused, my breath shallow, and glanced at the staircase. A faint light glowed from upstairs where Andrew and Sarah's bedroom door was closed. Cinder appeared from nowhere, her eyes glinting like twin moons, and brushed against my leg. She didn't purr, didn't meow, just stared at me, then darted toward the front door. I followed, my heart racing as if she were guiding me. The front door opened without a sound, a small mercy. I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin, carrying the scent of dew and something sharper, like iron. The neighborhood was two perfect, identical houses, cars, without a speck of dust, sidewalks smooth as glass. It was a place that didn't want me, that had never wanted me. I glanced back at the house, its windows dark except for one upstairs where a curtain twitched just for a moment. My breath caught. Was someone watching, or was it the house itself, its secrets stirring? I didn't leave a note. What could I say? Thank you for the hospitality. I know what you're planning. I turned and walked the suitcase rolling behind me, its wheels whispering against the pavement. Each step felt heavier, not from the weight of my belongings, but from the shame of having trusted too long, of having believed love could live in a place like this. The street was silent, save for the faint rustle of leaves, but I felt eyes on me, real or imagined. I couldn't say. A motion sensor light flicked on as I passed the third house, bathing me in cold white light. I froze, caught like a thief, and for a moment I wanted to turn back. To knock on the door, say I'd misunderstood, say I was tired, confused, old. But I hadn't misunderstood. The whisper had been clear, and Andrew's silence had been louder. I kept walking barefoot, the pavement cool and unyielding beneath my feet. The bus stop was 2 blocks away, a metal bench under a flickering streetlight. I sat the suitcase beside me and checked the schedule taped to the pole. The last bus would come in 10 minutes if it was still running. I hadn't taken public transportation since before the surgery, since before I'd handed over my independence to a son who saw me as a signature, a bank account, a room to be emptied. The night pressed against me heavy and alive. I zipped up my coat, not for warmth, but for the feeling of being held together. Cinder's eyes flashed in my memory, and I wondered if she'd known something I hadn't, if her stares into empty corners had been warnings. The thought sent a shiver through me, not of fear, but of clarity. This house, this family, this plan, it wasn't just betrayal. It was something darker, something that felt orchestrated, as if the walls themselves had been complicit. I shook my head, trying to focus. I wasn't losing my mind. I was waking up. The bus arrived, its headlights cutting through the dark like a blade. I climbed aboard, the driver barely glancing at me. Anywhere in particular, he asked, his voice rough with fatigue. "Downtown," I said, "near the old library." He nodded and the doors hissed shut behind me. I sat near the back, the suitcase at my feet, and watched the empty streets blur past. Each streetlight flashed a thought. They planned this. They forged my name. They wanted me gone. The words pulsed in rhythm with the hum of the engine, and with each mile, the weight in my chest shifted, not lighter, but sharper, like a blade being honed. The bus dropped me off in a part of town I hadn't seen in years. The old library was gone, replaced by a glass building that gleamed like a false promise. I wandered my steps slow but steady until I found a small motor lodge tucked between a gas station and a diner that never closed. The woman behind the counter didn't look up as I paid for a room. It was small, clean enough, with a faint smell of bleach and something older, like regret. I locked the door behind me, set the suitcase on a chair, and exhaled the sound loud in the silence. Only then did I let myself feel it. Not fear, not yet, but a quiet fury. A spark that had been buried too long. The worst part wasn't the whisper or the forged signatures or even the way Sarah's smile never reached her eyes. It was the realization that I'd stopped being a mother to Andrew. I'd become a problem to be solved, a shadow to be erased. I sat on the bed, still in my coat, and stared at the phone in my hand. No missed calls, no messages. They hadn't noticed I was gone. Or they had, and they didn't care. I didn't cry. I hadn't cried in years, not since my husband's funeral when the world had felt too heavy to hold. Instead, I opened the suitcase and pulled out the envelope I'd taken from Andrew's drawer. The papers were still there, crisp and accusing. I didn't read them again, not yet. I didn't need to. I knew what they said, what they meant. But as I held them, something strange happened. The edges of the envelope grew warm, almost pulsing, as if the papers inside were alive, whispering their own secrets. I dropped it onto the bed, my heart racing. The room was still, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. I lay back, fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling, its cracks like veins under skin. The hum of the motel's fridge was a distant train, always moving, never stopping. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind replayed everything, the whisper, the documents, the way Andrew's silence had said more than words ever could. But somewhere in the dark, a new thought took root, one that felt both foreign and ancient. I was not done. I was not fading, and whatever came next, I would face it on my terms. The night air bit at my skin as I stood on the sidewalk, the suitcase a heavy anchor at my side. The house loomed behind me, its windows dark except for that one upstairs where the curtain had twitched moments ago. I could still feel its gaze, not human, not entirely, as if the walls themselves were watching, waiting to see if I'd falter. I didn't. I turned my back on it, on Andrew, on Sarah, on the life I'd been tricked into believing was safe. My shoes were still in my hand, the pavement cool and unyielding beneath my bare feet. Each step away from that house felt like a defiance, a small rebellion against the whisper that had shattered my trust. Tomorrow, we'll lock her away. The street was too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears, heavy with secrets. The neighborhood was a labyrinth of perfection, identical houses with manicured lawns, cars gleaming under streetlights, sidewalks without a single crack. It was a place that didn't belong to me, and I to it. I moved quickly, the suitcase's wheels whispering against the asphalt, a soft, rhythmic hum that matched the pounding of my heart. I didn't know where I was going, not exactly. The bus stop 2 blocks away was my only destination, a beacon in the dark, but as I walked, the air seemed to thicken, charged with something I couldn't name. The shadows moved wrong, stretching too long, curling at the edges like fingers reaching for me. I stopped my breath, catching. A streetlight flickered above, casting jagged patterns on the ground. For a moment, I thought I saw something in the light, a shape human, but not standing at the edge of the glow. It was gone when I blinked, but the chill in my bones lingered. I tightened my grip on the suitcase handle, my knuckles white. "You're imagining things," May I whispered to myself, but the words felt hollow. The house had done something to me, or maybe it was the envelope in my bag, the one with my forged signature, pulsing with a warmth I couldn't explain. It wasn't just paper. It was proof of a betrayal deeper than I had imagined, and it carried a weight that felt alive. I kept moving faster now, the bus stop coming into view. The metal bench sat under a dim streetlight, its surface scuffed and cold. I sank onto it, setting the suitcase beside me, and checked the schedule taped to the pole. The last bus was due in 8 minutes. I hadn't ridden a bus since before the surgery, since before I'd handed over my independence to Andrew's promises. The thought of him twisted something in my chest. Not pain, not yet, but a sharp, growing resolve. He hadn't objected to Sarah's plan. Not a word, not a sick, just silence. A silence that said, "Fine." That silence was louder than her whisper, and it cut deeper. I slipped my shoes on the leather stiff against my feet and zipped my coat tighter. The night was gentle, early fall, with a breeze that carried the scent of damp leaves, and something else, something metallic like blood or rust. I glanced back down the street, half expecting to see a figure in the distance, Andrew or Sarah or something worse. But there was nothing, just the empty road and the house, its silhouette a dark stain against the sky. I wondered if Cinder the cat was still inside watching from a window with those moonlit eyes. She'd known something, I was sure of it. The way she'd stared at empty corners, her tail twitching as if she saw what I couldn't. I wished I'd brought her with me, but maybe she'd stayed to guard something or to warn me. The bus arrived with a low rumble, its headlights slicing through the dark. I stood pulling the suitcase behind me and climbed aboard. The driver, a heavy-set man with a graying beard, barely looked at me. "Where to?" he asked, his voice rough but not unkind. "Downtown," I said. "Near the old library." He nodded, and the doors hissed shut. I chose a seat near the back, the suitcase at my feet, and stared out the window as the bus pulled away. The streets blurred past each flash of light, a reminder of what I was leaving behind. They forged my name. They took my money. They planned to erase me. The thoughts looped in my mind, each one sharpening the spark of fury I'd felt in the motel. But there was something else now. Something new, a hum in my chest, like a pulse I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't fear or anger, but something older, stronger, like a memory of who I'd been before I let myself fade. The bus ride was quiet, save for the hum of the engine and the occasional cough from a passenger up front. I kept my hand on the suitcase, my fingers brushing the edge of the envelope inside. It was still warm, unnaturally so, and I wondered if I was losing my mind. I'd seen things in that house, shadows that moved without light mirrors, that blurred my reflection, dreams of locked rooms with no doors. I'd told myself it was age exhaustion, but now I wasn't so sure. The envelope felt like a key, not just to their betrayal, but to something bigger, something I couldn't yet name. The bus stopped downtown, and I stepped off into a world I hadn't seen in years. The old library was gone, replaced by a glass monstrosity that glowed like a false star. The streets were empty, the air heavy with the promise of rain. I wandered my steps slow but steady, the suitcase rolling behind me like a loyal companion. The city felt different at night, its edges sharper, its shadows deeper. I passed a closed bookstore, its windows reflecting my silhouette, but the reflection wavered as if I were underwater. I stopped staring, and for a moment I thought I saw another face behind mine, pale, indistinct, with eyes that burned. I turned, but the street was empty. "Get a grip," may I muttered, but my voice trembled. I kept walking, my heart pounding, until I found a small motor lodge tucked between a gas station and a 24-hour diner. The sign flickered, its neon letters buzzing like insects. The woman behind the counter, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, didn't look up as I paid for a room. "First floor end of the hall," she said, sliding a key across the counter. The room was small, with faded wallpaper and a bed that sagged in the middle. It smelled of bleach and something older, like forgotten promises. I locked the door behind me, double-checking the bolt, and set the suitcase on a rickety chair. Only then did I let myself exhale the sound loud in the stillness. I sank onto the bed, my coat still on, and stared at the ceiling, its cracks like a map of somewhere I'd never been. The hum in my chest was stronger now, a steady rhythm that felt both foreign and familiar. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I saw the house again, not as it was, but as it might be, a labyrinth of locked doors, each one hiding a truth I hadn't yet uncovered. I opened the suitcase and pulled out the envelope. The papers inside were crisp, their edges sharp enough to cut. I spread them across the bed, my hands steady despite the warmth that pulsed from them. The power of attorney, the bank transfers, the draft application for a care facility, they were all there, each one a betrayal written in black ink. But there was something else, something I hadn't noticed before. Tucked behind the forms was a small, folded note, its paper yellowed and brittle as if it had been hidden for years. My name was written on it in a script I didn't recognize, elegant and sharp like a blade. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the note. The air in the room grew heavy, the hum of the fridge now a low, insistent drone. I unfolded the paper and the words inside sent a chill through me. They will take everything unless you wake. No signature, no date, just those words written in ink that shimmered faintly as if it were still wet. I dropped the note, my heart racing. It wasn't Andrew's handwriting or Sarah's. It wasn't mine. But it felt like a message meant for me, a warning from something or someone beyond the walls of that house. I stood pacing the small room, the note burning in my mind. Wake. I'd thought I was awake, that I'd seen the truth in Sarah's whisper in the forged signatures. But this was different. This was a call to something deeper, something that made the shadows in the house and the warmth of the envelope feel like pieces of a larger puzzle. I glanced at the door, half expecting to hear footsteps, but there was only silence. I returned to the bed and tucked the note back into the envelope, my hands trembling now. Whatever this was, I couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. I lay back, still fully dressed, and let the hum in my chest guide my thoughts. I saw flashes of the house. Andrew's study, the locked drawer, the way Sarah's eyes lingered on me when she thought I wasn't looking. I saw Cinder, her gaze fixed on empty air, and I wondered if she'd been trying to show me something all along. The house had felt alive, its walls pulsing with secrets, and now I was free of it, but not free of its shadow. That shadow clung to me heavy and cold as if it had followed me out into the night. I didn't sleep much. The motel's fridge hummed like a distant train, and the cracks in the ceiling seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. I kept the envelope closed, its warmth a strange comfort, a reminder that I wasn't imagining things. By dawn, the room was bathed in gray light, and I felt different, not rested, but sharper, as if the night had carved away some of the fog that had clouded my mind. I stood, my joints echoing, but my resolve firm, and made tea with the motel's rusty kettle. It tasted like metal, but it was hot, and I needed something to hold. I opened the suitcase again, my fingers brushing the envelope. The note was still there, its words unchanged. They will take everything unless you wake. I didn't know what it meant, not yet, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going back. I wasn't the woman who'd arrived at Andrew's house trusting and tired. I was something else now, something stronger, and whatever lay ahead, I would face it with eyes wide open. The motel room was a cocoon of gray light as dawn crept through the thin curtains, casting shadows that seemed to writhe in the corners. I sat on the edge of the bed, the bitter taste of metallic tea lingering on my tongue, the envelope from Andrew's drawer resting in my lap. Its warmth pulsed faintly like a heartbeat, and the mysterious note inside, "They will take everything unless you wake," burned in my mind. I hadn't slept, not really. The hum in my chest, that strange ancient rhythm, had kept me alert, sharpening my senses, as if the night itself were whispering to me. I wasn't the woman who'd arrived at Andrew's house 2 months ago, trusting and tired. I was waking just as the note demanded it, and today I would uncover the truth. The papers inside the envelope were spread across the bed, their edges sharp and accusing. I hadn't dared to read them fully last night, but now in the cold light of morning, I forced myself to face them. The power of attorney was first a legal document authorizing Andrew to act on my behalf, banking, property, medical decisions. My signature was at the bottom, but it wasn't mine. The loops were too tight, the slant too deliberate, a forgery so close it could fool a stranger. Next was a transaction history, a cold record of my life's savings, $189,000 from the sale of my cottage, siphoned away in 4 months. Transfers to an account labeled with my old address withdrawals, labeled home maintenance and medical expenses, none of which I'd seen or approved. The final document was the worst, a draft application for an assisted living facility, my name typed neatly at the top. Age 78. Medical conditions, hip surgery, early signs of cognitive decline. That last line stopped my breath. Cognitive decline. Sarah's voice echoed in my memory, sweet and false. Maybe it's time to get your memory checked. Mom. I folded the papers back into the envelope, my hands steady despite the storm in my chest. The warmth from the envelope grew stronger, almost burning, and I set it down, staring at it as if it might speak. The note's words. They will take everything felt like a warning from something beyond me, something that knew more than I did. I stood pacing the small room, the hum in my chest now a steady pulse urging me to act. The house had been alive. I was sure of it now, its walls complicit in Andrew and Sarah's plan. But I was out, and I wouldn't let them erase me. Not my name, not my money, not my life. I dressed quickly, pulling on a sweater and scarf, and checked the time. 7:32 a.m. The bank opened at 8 hours. I needed answers, not just about the papers, but about what else they'd taken, what else they'd planned. The motel's rusty kettle hissed as I made another cup of tea, more for the warmth than the taste. As I sipped, I caught my reflection in the small mirror above the dresser. My face was sharper than I remembered, my eyes clearer, but there was something else, a flicker at the edge of the glass, a shadow that didn't match my movements. I turned away, my heart racing. The house's influence lingered. Or maybe it was the envelope, its secrets tying me to something I couldn't yet name. I left the motel, the suitcase rolling behind me, and hailed a cab to Fairmont Bank's downtown branch. The city was waking, its streets buzzing with early commuters, but I felt detached, as if I were moving through a dream. The cab driver, a young man with a quiet voice, didn't ask questions when I gave him the address. I sat in the back, clutching my bag, the envelope inside like a talisman. The hum in my chest was louder now, a rhythm that felt like it was guiding me, pulling me toward the truth. The bank was a stark contrast to the motel, a gleaming building with glass doors and polished marble floors. I stepped inside, the air cool and sterile, and approached the front desk. A woman with a name tag reading. Marcy smiled, then faltered when she saw my face. I must have looked like a storm, my eyes too sharp, my posture too rigid. I'd like to speak with a manager. I said, my voice steady but firm. It's regarding power of attorney and financial oversight. Marcy nodded quickly and disappeared down a hallway. I stood, my hands tight on the suitcase handle, aware of the eyes of other tellers glancing my way. The hum in my chest pulsed, and for a moment I thought I heard a whisper, not Sarah's, not Andrew's, but something softer, older, like the note's words spoken aloud. I shook my head, focusing on the present. I wasn't here to chase shadows. I was here to reclaim what was mine. A man in a gray suit appeared mid-30s with tired eyes and a cautious smile. "Mrs. Jordan," he said, extending a hand. "I'm David. Let's go to my office." His office was small, but orderly, with a desk cluttered with papers and a window overlooking the street. I sat across from him, the suitcase at my feet, and handed him the envelope without a word. He opened it, his expression neutral at first, then tightening as he read. The power of attorney, the transaction history, the care facility, application. He flipped through them slowly, his fingers pausing on my forged signature. The air in the room grew heavy, and I swear I saw the papers shimmer faintly as if the ink were alive. David didn't notice, but I did, and the hum in my chest quickened. After a long pause, he looked up. Did you sign this power of attorney? No. I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. Do you recall authorizing these transfers? No. Has anyone accessed your accounts on your behalf recently? My son, Andrew Jordan, and his wife, Sarah. David's lips pressed into a thin line. Mrs. Jordan, this is serious. Forging a signature on a legal document is a felony. If these funds were moved without your knowledge, we'll need to open an internal investigation. I leaned forward, my hands clasped. I'm not here to press charges. Not yet. I'm here to stop everything right now. He nodded, his eyes softening slightly. You want to revoke this power of attorney? Yes. Today. And freeze any access they have to my accounts. Everything. Cancel automatic payments, shut down shared access. I want the remaining funds moved to a new account in my name only. David leaned back, typing something into his computer. We can do that. It'll take some time to review everything, every payment, every form. Some of these were notarized, which complicates things. Notarized by whom? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He glanced at the papers. A notary named Elizabeth Crane. Do you know her? No, I said. But the name sent a chill through me. Crane. It sounded familiar, like a whisper I'd heard in a dream. The hum in my chest pulsed again, and I saw a flash, an image of a woman I didn't know, her face pale, her eyes sharp, signing a document in a dimly lit room. I blinked, and the image was gone, but the unease lingered. Just make sure it's stopped, I said. All of it. David nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard. We'll freeze the accounts immediately. I'll need you to sign some forms to revoke the power of attorney and set up the new account. We can also add alerts to monitor any future activity. Do it, I said. And I want physical statements mailed to a new address. No online access, no digital trail. Understood. He stood, excusing himself to gather the necessary paperwork. As he left, I glanced at the envelope on his desk. The papers were still, but the air around them seemed to shimmer like heat rising from pavement. I reached out my fingers, hovering over the note inside, and felt a jolt, like static, but deeper, as if the paper were pulling me into its secrets. I pulled my hand back, my heart racing. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about money. It was about control, about erasure, and maybe something more. David returned with a stack of forms, and we spent the next hour reviewing everything. Each transaction Andrew had authorized was a wound, 600 here, 400 there, automatic payments for services I'd never seen for a house I no longer owned. There were charges labeled medical expenses for doctors I'd never met, home maintenance for a cottage that was now someone else's. One line made my blood run cold. Tuition, Grandview, Academy, annual, Sarah's niece's school. They'd used my money to impress someone who wasn't even family. I looked up at David, my voice steady but low. They've been bleeding me dry. He nodded, his expression grim. This qualifies as financial exploitation, Mrs. Jordan. If you change your mind about legal action, we can refer you to our fraud unit. I'll handle that separately, I said. Just make sure they can't touch anything else. They won't, he assured me. The accounts are frozen, and the new one is in your name only. We're setting up alerts now. As he spoke, I felt the hum in my chest shift like a lock clicking into place. I wasn't just protecting my money, I was reclaiming my name, my choices, my life. But the note's words lingered unless you wake, and I knew there was more to uncover. The house, the papers, the shadows that moved without light, they were part of a puzzle I was only beginning to see. David handed me a card before I left. This is for a support organization, he said. They help people in situations like this, housing, legal aid, emotional support. It's confidential. I took the card, my fingers brushing his, and felt another jolt, like the one from the envelope. His eyes flickered as if he felt it too, but he said nothing. "Thank you," I said, slipping the card into my bag. "I might call." I stepped out of the bank into the crisp morning air, the city now fully awake. Cars honked. People rushed past with coffee cups and phones. But I stood still, the suitcase at my feet. The hum in my chest was stronger now, a rhythm that felt like power, like purpose. I wasn't just running anymore. I was fighting, and whatever secrets the envelope held, I would uncover them. The city pulsed around me as I stepped out of Fairmont Bank, the suitcase rolling behind me like a faithful shadow. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and exhaust, but it felt cleaner than the sterile weight of Andrew's house. The hum in my chest, that strange ancient rhythm, was steady now, a quiet fire that burned brighter with each step I took. I'd frozen their access, reclaimed my name, and locked them out of my future, but the envelope in my bag still pulsed with a warmth that wasn't natural. The note inside: "They will take everything unless you wake," was a riddle. I couldn't yet solve a whisper from something beyond the peepers, beyond the betrayal. I wasn't just running from Andrew and Sarah. I was running toward something, and I needed to find out what. The bank manager's card was tucked in my pocket, its edges worn from my fingers, brushing against it. A support organization, he'd said. Housing, legal aid, emotional support. I didn't want pity, but I needed a foothold, a place to stand while I pieced together the fragments of my life. The city was too loud, too fast, and I felt like a ghost moving through it, unseen, but not unnoticed. The shadows seemed to follow me, flickering at the edges of my vision, just as they had in the house. I glanced at a shop window as I passed, and my reflection wavered again, the edges blurring as if the glass couldn't hold me. For a moment, I thought I saw the same pale face from the motel mirror, its eyes sharp and knowing, but when I blinked, it was gone. I stopped at a bench under an old elm tree, its branches heavy with leaves that rustled like whispers. The suitcase rested beside me, and I pulled out the card. Patrice Elder Services. A phone number, nothing more. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the digits on my phone. The hum in my chest pulsed, urging me forward, and I dialed. The line rang twice before a woman's voice answered, gentle but firm, like she'd seen too much to be surprised. "Elder Services. This is Patrice." "May Jordan," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "David from Fairmont Bank gave me your number." A pause, then warmth. "May. I'm glad you called. Can you come by this morning? We're at the community center on Oak Street between the church and the grocery store." I glanced at the street signs. Oak was 6 blocks away. "I'll be there," I said, and hung up before I could change my mind. The hum in my chest flared like a spark catching flame, and I stood pulling the suitcase behind me. The city seemed to watch its buildings leaning in their windows, glinting like eyes. I told myself it was my imagination, but the note's words echoed. Unless you wake. I was awake, wasn't I? Or was there more to see? The community center was unassuming, a low brick building with a faded sign and the faint smell of coffee drifting from an open door. Patrice was waiting at the front desk, her silver-streaked hair pulled back, her eyes soft but piercing, as if she could see the weight I carried. "You must be May," she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was warm, steady, and for a moment I felt anchored. "Come on back, we'll talk." Her office was simple: 2 chairs, a desk, a bookshelf lined with pamphlets about elder rights and fraud. I sat the suitcase at my feet and told her everything, the whisper in the hallway, the forged papers, the bank. I didn't mention the note or the warmth of the envelope, not yet. Those felt too private, too strange, like secrets I wasn't ready to share. Patrice listened without interrupting her expression, unchanging. But her eyes sharpened when I described the forged power of attorney. This happens more often than you'd think, she said when I finished, especially to women who trust too easily. But you didn't stay quiet. That's rare. I wasn't naive, I said quietly. I was hopeful. You were loving, she corrected, her voice firm but kind. And they took advantage. Let's make sure they can't do it again. She pulled out a form, short and straightforward, and began asking questions: my background, my needs, my plans. I answered carefully, aware of the envelope in my bag, its warmth a constant reminder of the mystery I hadn't yet unraveled. I don't want therapy, I said before she could offer. I just need to make sure no one can put me in this position again. And I need a place to stay, somewhere safe. Patrice nodded, unfazed. That's exactly what we'll do. I can connect you with a legal partner, no cost. And we have housing options, transitional units independent for women who've been displaced. I'm not displaced. I said the words sharper than I intended. I left. She smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. That's even better. She picked up the phone and dialed, her voice low as she spoke to someone named Ruth. 10 minutes later, a woman walked in, early 40s tailored jacket, sharp glasses, and a quiet intensity that filled the room. Mrs. Jordan, she said, extending a hand. I'm Ruth Becker. Patrice told me you need help reclaiming what's yours. I nodded, handing her the envelope. The warmth flared as her fingers brushed it, and her eyes flickered just for a moment as if she felt it too. She opened it, reading the papers slowly, her expression hardening with each page. The power of attorney, the bank transfers, the care facility, application. She studied them all, then looked up. This is fraud. Financial exploitation, elder abuse. You have every right to protect yourself. Tell me what you want, not what happened, just what you need moving forward. Her directness steadied me. I want a new will, I said. Everything rewritten, my son and his wife removed entirely. I don't want them to receive a cent, not even by mistake. And I want my financial power of attorney reassigned to someone I trust. Someone who'll act only with my written permission. Do you have someone in mind? Ruth asked, her pen poised over a notepad. I thought of Clara, my niece in Arizona. She'd sent birthday cards every year, even when I didn't answer. She'd visited after my surgery, bringing soup and magazines, never asking about money. Yes, I said. Clara. My niece. Good, Ruth said. We'll send the forms to her for co-signing. I also recommend a living will and a medical directive. No one should make decisions about your care but you, unless you've named them. I nodded, the hum in my chest pulsing with approval. That's what I want. We spent nearly 2 hours together, drafting documents, reviewing accounts, listing assets still in my name. Ruth explained that the second mortgage Andrew had taken out on my old cottage, using my forged signature, could be challenged, but I'd need to decide whether to press charges or simply sever ties. I don't want their money, I said. I want mine, my name, my silence from them. Ruth's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. I can help with that. As we worked, the envelope sat on her desk, its warmth a quiet presence. I didn't mention it, but I noticed the way Ruth's fingers lingered on it, as if she sensed something too. When we finished, she handed me a new folder, clean and labeled with my name in her neat handwriting. Everything will be official by the end of the week, she said. Until then, no one can touch anything. If they try, you call me. I took the folder, its weight grounding me. Thank you, I said and meant it. As I stood to leave the room, seemed to shift, the air growing heavy, and I swear I heard a whisper. Not Ruth's, not Patrice's, but the same soft, ancient voice from the note. Keep going. I froze my hand on the suitcase, but Ruth didn't seem to hear it. She was already turning back to her desk, her focus on the next task. I left her office, the hum in my chest stronger, like a song I was only beginning to understand. Outside, the sun was low, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. I walked the suitcase rolling behind me until I reached a small park near the train station. I sat on a bench, the folder in my lap, and let the world move around me. The city was alive, but I felt apart from it, as if I were standing on the edge of something vast and unseen. The note's words echoed again. They will take everything. And I wondered what everything meant. Not just money, not just freedom, but something deeper, something tied to the warmth of the envelope, the shadows in the house, the face in the mirror. My phone buzzed, startling me. Andrew's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring, watching it like it was a snake until it stopped. A moment later, a message appeared. "Mom, where are you? Please call me." I stared at it, the hum in my chest flaring with defiance. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about what I had taken with me, my name, my power, my truth. Another message followed, this time from Sarah. "We woke up and your room was empty. This is unfair. You're scaring the kids." I almost laughed. The kids who hadn't spoken 10 words to me in a month were scared. No, Sarah was scared, scared that her plan was unraveling, that the old woman she'd meant to lock away had slipped through her fingers. I turned the phone off the silence, a small victory. I didn't owe them answers. Not anymore. But I needed a place to go, a place to rebuild. The card from Patrice was still in my pocket, and I dialed her again. "I need that housing," I said when she answered. "Somewhere I can start over." "I've got just the place," she said, her voice warm. "A small unit, no stairs, quiet building. It's yours for 6 months, no rent utilities covered. I'll send someone to meet you." Her name was Lael, a field coordinator from Elder Services, mid-30s, with a jacket bearing a patch that read North Coast Community Services. She met me at the park, her arms full of folders, her smile sheepish but kind. "You must be May," she said, shaking my hand. "Patrice said you're kind of a legend already." I raised an eyebrow. That's never a good sentence. She laughed, a sound that cut through the heaviness in my chest. "No, it's good. Most people in your position don't fight back." "You did. That's rare." She led me to a small apartment building a few blocks away. Its brick facade faded but sturdy. The unit was on the first floor, a one-bedroom with old carpet, and a window that stuck when I tried to open it. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Layal handed me 2 mugs and a stack of fresh towels. "Just in case you want coffee with someone," she said. "Or don't." I smiled, the first real smile in days. "Thank you." She left me to settle in, and I unpacked slowly, each item: sweater, notebook, socks, feeling like a piece of myself reclaimed. The envelope went on the small kitchen table, its warmth a quiet presence. I didn't open it, not yet, but I felt its pull like a compass pointing to truths I hadn't yet faced. That night, I stood at the window, the city lights soft and distant. No one was watching me. No one had access to my drawers, my name, my future. For the first time in years, I felt unclaimed, and I liked it. But the shadows followed. As I turned off the light, the room seemed to hum, not unlike the house, and I saw it again. The pale face in the corner, its eyes burning with something like recognition. I blinked, and it was gone, but the hum in my chest answered a promise that I was only beginning to understand. The apartment was quiet, save for the faint hum of the city outside and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. My new home, small and unassuming, felt like a fortress, its walls untainted by the cold perfection of Andrew's house. I sat at the kitchen table, a mug of tea cooling in my hands, the envelope from his study resting before me like a silent sentinel. Its warmth had faded slightly, but it still pulsed faintly, as if waiting for me to act. The note inside, "They will take everything unless you wake," haunted me, its cryptic warning weaving through my thoughts like a thread I couldn't unravel. The hum in my chest, that ancient rhythm, was stronger now, a steady fire that burned brighter each time I defied the past. 3 days had passed since I had met with Ruth the lawyer and secured my finances, my will, and my future. The papers were signed. Clara named as my new power of attorney, and Andrew and Sarah locked out of every corner of my life. But freedom, I was learning, wasn't just a signature. It was a battle one that didn't end when you walked away. My phone, silent since I'd turned it off at the park, lay on the table next to the envelope. I hadn't checked it since, but I knew they'd be reaching out Andrew with his feigned concern, Sarah with her calculated guilt. They weren't done with me, not yet, and I wasn't done with them. I stood stretching my aching joints and moved to the window. The city sparkled below its lights, soft but distant, like stars I couldn't touch. The hum in my chest pulsed, and for a moment I thought I saw something in the glass, a flicker, not my reflection, but that pale face again, its eyes burning with a quiet intensity. I turned, my heart racing, but the room was empty. The shadows were still, but they felt alive, watching as if the apartment carried echoes of the house I'd fled. I shook my head, telling myself it was exhaustion, but the note's words whispered back, "Unless you wake." I was awake, wasn't I? Or was there something more? Something the shadows and the envelope knew that I didn't? My phone buzzed, shattering the silence. I froze, staring at it as Andrew's name flashed on the screen. The hum in my chest flared a warning or an encouragement I couldn't tell. I let it ring, each vibration a challenge until it stopped. A moment later, a voicemail icon appeared. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. His voice, smooth and practiced, would be full of apologies, explanations, lies. Another buzz followed Sarah. This time, a text. "May, we're worried sick. The kids are asking where you went. Please come home." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the small room. Home. That house was a cage, its walls complicit in their plan to erase me. The kids who barely looked at me weren't asking. Sarah was grasping her control slipping, and she hated it. I turned the phone face down, but the messages kept coming, each one a needle in my resolve. Andrew. Mom. "I don't know what you think you heard, but we need to talk. Sarah. This isn't fair to us. You're acting irrationally." Irrationally. The word stung, not because it was true, but because it was what they wanted me to believe. They'd written it in the care facility application, early signs of cognitive decline, a lie meant to lock me away, to make me doubt myself. But I didn't doubt. Not anymore. The hum in my chest was proof of that, a pulse of power that grew with every step I took away from them. The next morning, a letter arrived, slipped under my door in a crisp white envelope, not unlike the one from Andrew's study. My name was typed in sharp black ink, no return address. I picked it up, my fingers tingling as they brushed the paper, and felt a faint warmth, like the one from the other envelope. My heart quickened. I tore it open, expecting another cryptic note, but it was worse, a formal letter from a law firm signed by someone named Gregory Holt, dear Mrs. Jordan. It began, "We represent Andrew and Sarah Jordan in a matter concerning your recent actions. We request a meeting to discuss your abrupt departure and the financial decisions made in your absence. Our clients are concerned for your well-being and seek resolution to avoid escalation." I read it twice, my hands steady, but my mind racing. Resolution. They meant control. They meant dragging me back, forcing me to explain to justify my freedom. The letter was polite, professional, but it reeked of Sarah's hand, her calm, calculated tone, her need to win. I set it on the table next to the first envelope, and the air seemed to hum, the two papers vibrating faintly as if they recognized each other. I stepped back, my breath shallow. The room was still, but the shadows in the corners seemed to shift, curling like smoke. I heard it again, that soft, ancient whisper. Keep going. It wasn't my imagination. It was real, tied to the note, the envelope, the hum in my chest. I called Ruth immediately, my voice calm but firm. They've sent a lawyer's letter, I said, reading her the text. They want a meeting. Ruth's response was sharp like a blade. Don't meet them. Don't respond. Forward the letter to me and I'll handle it. They're fishing May. They know they've lost control and they're trying to scare you into coming back. They're not scaring me, I said, and I meant it. The hum in my chest flared a quiet fire that burned away doubt. I want them to know I'm done. Good, Ruth said. We'll draft a response, formal, final. No negotiation, no reconciliation, just a clear statement that you've revoked their access and will protect your rights by any means necessary. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Do it. That afternoon, I met Ruth at her office, the same small space with its cluttered desk and narrow window. She had the letter from Holt, its edges already creased from her careful reading. This is intimidation, she said, tapping the paper. They're hoping you'll panic, agree to a meeting, maybe even apologize. But you've already taken the power back. They can't touch you unless you let them. I won't. I said, my voice steady. The hum in my chest pulsed, and I felt it again, that sense of something larger, something guiding me. I handed Ruth the envelope from Andrew's study, the one with the forged papers and the mysterious note. There's something else, I said. I found this in their house. It's strange. She opened it, her eyes narrowing as she read the power of attorney, the bank transfers, the care facility application. Her fingers paused on the note, and I saw it a flicker in her expression, as if she felt the warmth too. Where did you get this? She asked, her voice low. Andrew's study, I said. The night I left. It's not just the forgeries. The note, it's not from them. I don't know who wrote it, but it's alive. Ruth looked at me, her gaze steady but searching. Alive. I hesitated, then nodded. It's warm. It hums, like it's trying to tell me something. She didn't laugh, didn't dismiss me. Instead, she folded the note carefully and set it aside. I've seen a lot in my line of work, May. People who trust the wrong family, who lose everything. But sometimes there's more at play, things we don't fully understand. Keep this safe. It might mean more than we know. Her words sent a chill through me, not of fear, but of recognition. The hum in my chest answered a quiet song of strength. Ruth spent the next hour drafting a response to Holt's letter, a single page that laid out my position: no meeting, no reconciliation, all access revoked. If they push further, she said, we'll escalate. Fraud charges, elder abuse complaints. They won't want that. I left her office with a copy of the response the original mailed to Holt's firm. The city was quieter now, the afternoon light soft and golden, but the shadows still lingered, curling at the edges of my vision. I walked back to the apartment, the suitcase lighter somehow, as if I'd shed a piece of the weight I'd carried. But the envelope in my bag was heavier, its warmth a constant reminder of the mystery I hadn't yet solved. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, the two envelopes side by side, the one from Andrew's study and the one from Holt. I opened the first, pulling out the note again. They will take everything unless you wake. The ink shimmered faint but undeniable. and the warmth pulsed stronger like a heartbeat. I traced the words with my finger, and for a moment I saw it a flash, not a memory, but a vision. A room with no windows, its walls lined with papers, each one bearing my name. A figure stood in the corner, pale and indistinct, its eyes burning with something like sorrow. I blinked and the vision was gone, but the hum in my chest roared a fire that wouldn't be silenced. My phone buzzed again, pulling me back. Another message from Sarah. "You're breaking Andrew's heart. Please, let's talk." I deleted it without responding. Then another from Andrew. "Mom, I don't know what's gotten into you, but we can fix this." I deleted that too. They weren't my family anymore. They were shadows, echoes of a trust I'd buried. The hum in my chest pulsed, and I felt it a strength I hadn't known I had, a power that was mine alone. I stood moving to the window and looked out at the city. The lights were brighter now, the shadows softer, as if they were retreating. The note was right. I was waking not just to their betrayal, but to something deeper, something tied to the warmth of the envelope, the whispers in the air, the face in the shadows. I didn't know what it was, not yet, but I would find out, and no letter, no lawyer, no lie would stop me. The apartment was starting to feel like mine, though its bare walls and worn carpet still carried the echo of someone else's life. I'd hung a scarf over the window to soften the city's harsh light, and the two mugs Leal had given me sat on the counter waiting for a guest I wasn't sure would come. The envelope from Andrew's study rested on the kitchen table, its warmth a quiet pulse like a heartbeat I couldn't ignore. The note inside, "They will take everything unless you wake," was a riddle I hadn't solved, but its words had rooted themselves in me, guiding me through the fog of betrayal. The hum in my chest, that ancient rhythm, was stronger now, a fire that burned brighter with every choice I made to reclaim myself. It had been a week since Ruth sent the response to Andrew and Sarah's lawyer, a single page that severed their last claim on me. My phone had gone quiet, their messages replaced by a silence that felt both victorious and hollow. I didn't miss them. Not the Andrew who'd stood silent while Sarah whispered her plan, not the Sarah who'd smiled while forging my name. But I missed who they'd been, or who I'd thought they were. That grief lingered sharp and private, but the hum in my chest wouldn't let it define me. I was waking as the note demanded, and today I would take another step. Leal had called the day before, her voice bright through the phone's static. "There's a volunteer program at the library," she'd said. "Thought you might like it. Books, people, no pressure. Starts tomorrow if you're up for it." I'd hesitated, my fingers brushing the envelope, but the hum in my chest flared, urging me forward. "I'll be there," I'd said. And now, standing in front of the library's stone facade, I felt a flicker of something like hope. The library was old, its walls lined with oak shelves that smelled of dust and time. The air was heavy with the weight of stories, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I belonged somewhere. A woman at the front desk, her hair gray and braided, looked up as I approached. Her name tag read, "Judith." "You must be May," she said, her smile warm but sharp, like she'd seen more than she let on. "Leal said you'd be joining us." "Yes," I said, setting my bag down. The envelope was inside its warmth, a quiet companion. "I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'm here." Judith laughed, a sound that eased the tension in my shoulders. "That's the best way to start. Come on, I'll show you around." She led me through the stacks, explaining the volunteer tasks, shelving books, helping patrons, organizing the community board. It was simple work, but it felt purposeful, like each book I touched was a piece of the world I could hold again. As we worked, Judith told me about the library's history, its quirks, the way the lights flickered when it rained. "This place has a mind of its own," she said, her eyes glinting. Sometimes I think it knows more than we do. I smiled, but her words sent a shiver through me. The hum in my chest pulsed, and I glanced at the shadows between the shelves. They seemed to shift, curling like smoke, just as they had in Andrew's house in the motel in my apartment. I wanted to ask Judith if she'd ever seen anything strange. Faces in mirrors, papers that warmed under your touch. But I didn't. Not yet. The library felt safe, but the mystery followed me, its threads woven into the envelope, the note, the hum. By noon, I was shelving books in the biography section, the quiet rhythm of the work soothing my nerves. A young man approached his glasses, smudged his arms full of books about folklore. "Can you help me find something?" He asked, his voice hesitant. "I'm looking for local myths, old stories maybe about spirits." I paused, my hand on a spine. Spirits, the word felt heavy tied to the pale face I'd seen in reflections, the whispers I couldn't explain. "Yeah," he said, adjusting his glasses. "There's this legend about a guardian, a woman who protects people from being forgotten. They say she leaves messages, warnings for those in trouble." The hum in my chest flared sharp and insistent. I thought of the note, its shimmering ink, its cryptic warning. What kind of messages? I asked, my voice steady but low. He shrugged, oblivious to the storm in my mind. Notes, mostly. Old paper, strange handwriting. People find them when they're about to lose something important. Money, freedom themselves. I nodded, my heart racing, and pointed him to a shelf of local history books. "Try there," I said, and he thanked me, disappearing into the stacks. I stood frozen, my hand trembling as I shelved the last book. The note wasn't just a warning. It was part of something bigger, something tied to the library, to the city, to the hum in my chest. I wanted to run back to my apartment, to open the envelope and read the note again, but I stayed. The library held me, its quiet strength, a mirror to my own. That afternoon, Judith invited me to join her for tea in the staff room, a cramped space with a kettle and mismatched mugs. We sat across from each other, the steam curling between us like a secret. "You're not what I expected," she said, her eyes studying me. "Layal said you'd been through something, but you don't seem broken." "I'm not." I said the words, surprising me with their certainty. "Not anymore." She nodded, sipping her tea. Good. This place has a way of finding people who need it. Or maybe it's the other way around." Her words lingered, and I felt the hum again, a quiet song of recognition. The library wasn't just a building, it was a sanctuary, a place where stories lived, where shadows whispered truths. I didn't tell Judith about the note, but I felt she'd understand if I did. There was something in her eyes, a knowing that went beyond words. Over the next few days, I settled into a routine. Mornings at the library shelving books, helping patrons, listening to Judith's stories about the city's forgotten corners. Afternoons in my apartment, unpacking the last of my belongings, making the space mine. Evenings at the window, watching the city breathe its lights, a promise of something new. The envelope stayed on the table, its warmth a constant reminder, but I didn't open it. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face whatever truth it held, but I knew I would be soon. One evening, as I sorted books in the library's quiet corner, a woman approached me. She was older, her hair white and loose, her eyes sharp like Judith's, but softer, like she'd seen the same shadows I had. "You're May," she said. Not a question. "I'm Irene. Judith said you might need a friend." I smiled, caught off guard. "I don't know about need, but I wouldn't mind one." Irene laughed, a sound that warmed the air. "Good. I live 2 blocks from here. Come for dinner tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just soup and stories." I agreed, and the next evening I found myself in Irene's small house, a cluttered, cozy space filled with books and candles. The soup was simple carrots, lentils, a hint of thyme, but it tasted like home, the kind I hadn't known since my cottage. We talked for hours, not about Andrew or Sarah, but about life, her years as a teacher, my days tending hydrangeas, the way the city changed but never forgot. Irene didn't pry, didn't judge, but her presence was a balm, a reminder that I wasn't alone. As I left her house, the night air cool against my skin, I felt the hum in my chest pulse strong and steady. I glanced at the stars brighter than I had seen in years and saw something a flicker, not a star, but a light that moved hovering above the street. It was gone when I blinked, but it left a warmth in me, like the envelope, like the note. I walked home, the suitcase long gone, replaced by a canvas bag from the library lighter, but full of purpose. Back in my apartment, I stood at the kitchen table, the envelope waiting. I opened it, pulling out the note, and read it again. They will take everything unless you wake. The ink shimmered, and the hum in my chest answered a song of strength of survival. I didn't know what the note meant, not fully, but I felt its truth. I was building a life, not just surviving one, and whatever secrets the shadows held, I would face them on my terms. The library had become my sanctuary, its oak shelves and soft light a balm against the shadows that still followed me. Each morning I shelved books their weight, grounding me their stories, whispering of lives I could still claim. The envelope from Andrew's study sat in my apartment, its warmth a quiet pulse like a heart waiting to speak. The note inside, they will take everything. Unless you wake was a riddle I hadn't fully unraveled, but its words had woven themselves into my bones. The hum in my chest, that ancient rhythm, grew stronger each day, a fire that burned brighter with every step I took toward myself. I was no longer the woman who'd trusted too easily, who'd walked into a cage disguised as a home. I was wait, and the world was starting to notice. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon, the library hushed, except for the rustle of pages and the soft tap of Judith's fingers on the front desk. I was in the biography section arranging a stack of memoirs when I felt it a shift in the air, like the moment before a storm. The hum in my chest flared sharp and insistent, and I looked up my hand, pausing on a book. A young man stood at the end of the aisle, his silhouette familiar, but out of place, like a memory I'd forgotten to claim. He was tall, lanky, with dark hair that fell into his eyes, and a hesitant posture that reminded me of Andrew at 19. But this wasn't Andrew. This was Lucas, my grandson. Grandma. His voice was soft, uncertain, but it carried a weight that stopped my breath. I hadn't seen him in months, not since I'd moved into Andrew's house, where he'd slipped past me like a ghost, his eyes always on his phone, his words few and far between. Now, here he was in my library, his hands shoved into his pockets, his gaze flickering between me and the floor. Lucas. I said, my voice steady but laced with something softer, something I hadn't let myself feel in weeks. The hum in my chest pulsed, not with warning, but with recognition, as if it knew him, too. What are you doing here? He shifted his sneakers, scuffing the carpet. I heard you were here. From Mom. She said you left, and I needed to see you. I set the book down, my hands trembling slightly. The library seemed to hold its breath, the shadows between the shelves curling closer, watching. I wanted to ask how he'd found me, what he wanted, but the hum in my chest urged me to listen, to wait. Let's sit, I said, gesturing to a table near the window where sunlight spilled across the wood like a promise. We sat across from each other, the table a small barrier between us. Lucas looked older than I remembered, his face sharper. his eyes carrying a weight I hadn't noticed before. He was 17 on the cusp of adulthood, but there was something fragile in him, something that reminded me of myself before I'd found the hum. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, "for not saying anything, for not seeing you." I tilted my head, studying him. "Seeing me." He nodded, his fingers twisting together. "At the house. You were there, but I didn't really look. I didn't know what they were doing. Not at first, but I should have. I heard them talking after you left, about the money, the papers, the place they wanted to send you. I should have said something." His words hit like a stone, heavy but not crushing. I thought of the house, its sterile walls and watchful shadows, the way Lucas had moved through it like a stranger. I'd blamed him in a quiet corner of my heart for his silence, but now I saw it for what it was: fear, not indifference. The hum in my chest softened a gentle pulse that told me to listen, not judge. "You're here, now," I said, my voice calm but firm. "That's what matters." "But Lucas, why are you here? Did they send you?" He shook his head, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. "No, they don't know I'm here. Mom's been weird since you left. Dad, too. They're fighting, saying stuff about lawyers, about how you betrayed them." He snorted a bitter sound. "Betrayed them, like you're the one who did something wrong." I leaned back, the hum in my chest flaring with a quiet pride. He saw it, the truth I'd fought to claim. But there was something else in his eyes, a flicker of unease, as if he carried a secret too heavy for his shoulders. The library's light seemed to dim the shadows, curling closer, and I felt it again, that pale face, its burning eyes watching from the edge of my vision. I blinked, and it was gone, but the hum pulsed, urging me to ask. "Lucas," I said, my voice low, "what did you hear? After I left, what did they say?" He hesitated, his fingers tightening on the table. It wasn't just them. There was someone else, a woman at the house last week. I didn't see her, but I heard her voice. She was talking about you, about controlling you. She mentioned a name, Crane, said something about finishing what they started. My heart stopped. Crane. The notary from the forged papers, the name that had sent a chill through me at the bank. The hum in my chest roared a fire that burned away doubt. This wasn't just about money, about betrayal. It was something bigger, something tied to the note, the envelope, the shadows that followed me. "What else?" I asked, my voice steady but sharp. Lucas swallowed, his eyes darting to the window. She said, "They needed to find you before you woke up." I didn't know what it meant, but it sounded wrong, like they were scared of you. I thought maybe you'd know. The air in the library grew heavy, the shelves seeming to lean in their shadows, stretching too long. I thought of the note, its shimmering ink, its warning. "They will take everything unless you wake." Lucas didn't know about it. Couldn't know, but his words were a mirror to its truth. I reached out my hand, covering his, and felt a jolt like the warmth from the envelope, but softer, like a connection. "You did the right thing," I said, "coming here, telling me." He nodded, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I don't want to be like them, Grandma. I don't want to just go along with it. You won't." I said, the hum in my chest pulsing with certainty. "You're here, and that's a start. Be your own person, Lucas, not their shadow." He smiled, a small, hesitant curve of his lips, and for a moment I saw the boy who'd climbed trees in my cottage's backyard, his laughter bright and free. The memory stung not with pain, but with hope, a hope I hadn't let myself feel since I'd fled. The library seemed to soften its shadows, retreating as if it approved of this moment, this connection. "Will you come back?" I asked, my voice softer now. "Not for them, but for you, for us." He nodded, his eyes bright. "Yeah, I'd like that." I walked him to the library's door, the sunlight warm on my skin. As he stepped outside, he turned back, his expression uncertain but earnest. "Grandma, be careful. I don't know what they're doing, but it's not over." "I know," I said, the hum in my chest flaring with resolve. "I'll be ready." He left his silhouette fading into the city's bustle, and I stood in the doorway, the library's quiet strength behind me. The hum was louder now, a song of power, of defiance. Lucas's visit had been a gift, a crack in the wall of betrayal that let light through. But his words about Crane, about finishing what they started, echoed the note's warning, and I knew the mystery wasn't solved. The pale face, the shimmering ink, the shadows, they were all part of something larger, something that wanted me awake. That evening, back in my apartment, I sat at the kitchen table, the envelope before me. I didn't open it, but I felt its warmth stronger now, like a beacon. The hum in my chest pulsed in rhythm, and I saw it again, a flash, not a vision, but a memory, my cottage. Its garden blooming, a woman standing at the gate, her face pale, her eyes burning. She wasn't there to harm me. She was there to warn me, to guide me. I blinked, and the image was gone, but the hum remained a promise that I was on the right path. I stood moving to the window and looked out at the city. The lights were brighter now, the shadows softer, as if they were allies, not enemies. Lucas's visit had given me something I hadn't expected, hope not just for him, but for me. I was building a life, not just escaping one, and whatever secrets the envelope held, whatever truth the shadows whispered, I would face them with the strength I'd found within myself. The library's soft light filtered through the tall windows, casting golden patterns across the oak shelves. I stood in the biography section, a stack of books in my arms, their weight a quiet comfort. The past 2 weeks had woven a rhythm into my life. Mornings at the library with Judith, evenings with Irene's soup and stories, and moments of quiet in my small apartment where the city's pulse felt like my own. The envelope from Andrew's study still sat on my kitchen table, its warmth a steady heartbeat, its note. "They will take everything unless you wake a riddle," I was close to solving. The hum in my chest, that ancient rhythm, was no longer a mystery but a strength, a fire that burned brighter with every choice I made to claim my life. I was awake, and the world was different for it. The shadows that had followed me curling in the corners of Andrew's house, flickering in the motel, lingering in my apartment, were quieter now, as if they'd been waiting for me to find my footing. Lucas's visit last week had been a turning point, a crack in the wall of betrayal that let light through. His words about the woman named Crane, about her talk of finishing what they started, had deepened the mystery, but they'd also strengthened my resolve. I wasn't just fighting Andrew and Sarah's betrayal. I was fighting something larger, something tied to the note, the envelope, the pale face that watched from the edges of my vision. But I wasn't afraid. The hum in my chest was a song now, a melody of power, and I was ready to sing it. This morning, as I shelved books, Judith approached her braid, swinging her eyes sharp with that knowing glint. "You've got mail," she said, handing me a crisp white envelope, its surface identical to the one from Andrew's study and the lawyer's letter from Holt. My name was typed in sharp black ink, no return address. The hum in my chest flared, and I felt it, the same warmth, the same pulse, as if the envelopes were siblings bound by the same unseen force. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady but low. I tucked the envelope into my bag next to the first one and continued shelving, though my mind was elsewhere. The library seemed to hum its shelves, leaning in its shadows, curling closer. I didn't open the envelope, not yet. I knew it was from them, Andrew, Sarah, or their lawyer, maybe even Crane herself. It was another attempt to pull me back, to guilt me, to control me. But I was done with their games. The hum in my chest was proof of that, a fire that burned away their lies. At noon, I took my break in the staff room. the envelope heavy in my bag. Judith joined me, her mug of tea steaming between us. "You look like you're carrying a storm," she said, her voice gentle but direct. "That envelope's got you rattled." I smiled, surprised by her perceptiveness. "It's from my son's lawyer. Or maybe someone else. I haven't opened it." "Don't," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Not until you're ready. You've got a strength now, May. I see it. Don't let them take it." Her words echoed the note's warning, and the hum in my chest pulsed a quiet agreement. I didn't tell her about the note, the warmth, the shadows, but I felt she'd understand. The library had its own secrets, its own whispers, and Judith seemed to hear them too. "I won't," I said, and meant it. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment, the two envelopes side by side on the kitchen table. I opened the new one first, my hands steady, despite the warmth that pulsed from it. The letter was from Gregory Holt, the lawyer, but its tone was sharper than before. "Mrs. Jordan, your refusal to engage has escalated this matter. Our clients request immediate mediation to address the financial and personal disputes arising from your actions. Failure to comply may result in legal consequences." No mention of concern, no pretense of care. Just a threat, cold and clear. I set the letter down, the hum in my chest flaring with defiance. They thought they could scare me, drag me back into their cage. But I wasn't the woman who'd trusted too easily, who'd handed over her life to a son who saw her as a signature. I was awake, and they couldn't touch me. I called Ruth, my voice calm but firm. "They sent another letter," I said, reading her the text. "They're threatening legal action." Ruth's laugh was sharp like a blade. "They're bluffing May. They've got nothing, no claim, no proof, just desperation. I'll draft a response, final and binding. No mediation, no contact. If they push, we'll file for fraud and elder abuse. They won't want that. Do it," I said, the hum in my chest roaring. "I want them to know I'm done." I hung up the apartment quiet except for the distant hum of the city. I opened the first envelope, pulling out the note. "They will take everything unless you wake." The ink shimmered brighter now, and the warmth pulsed stronger like a heartbeat. I traced the words, and a vision flashed. Not a memory, but something clearer, sharper. A woman, pale and ageless, standing in my cottage's garden, her eyes burning with sorrow and strength. She held a book, its pages glowing faintly, and she pointed to me, her voice a whisper. "You are enough." I blinked, and the vision was gone, but the hum in my chest sang a melody of certainty. I stood, moving to the window, and looked out at the city. The lights were soft, the shadows gentle, as if they'd been waiting for me to see. The woman in the vision wasn't a stranger. She was the guardian the young man in the library had spoken of, the one who left messages for those in danger of being forgotten. She'd left the note, I was sure of it, not to scare me, but to wake me. The hum in my chest was her gift, a spark of power I had carried all along, buried under trust and grief. The next morning, I returned to the library, the envelopes left behind their warmth no longer a mystery but a guide. I shelved books, helped patrons, and felt the library's quiet strength wrap around me. Judith watched me, her smile knowing. And I wondered if she'd seen the guardian too, if the library's whispers were hers as well. At noon, Leal stopped by her jacket, patched with the Elder Services logo. "You look different," she said, her eyes bright. "Lighter." "I feel it," I said. And it was true. The weight of Andrew's house of Sarah's lies was gone, replaced by the hum, the fire, the certainty that I was enough. That evening, Irene invited me to her house again, her table set with soup and candles. We talked late into the night, our stories weaving together like threads in a tapestry. She told me about her sister lost to a family that didn't see her, And I told her about the note, the guardian, the hum. She didn't laugh, didn't doubt. This city's full of old magic, she said, her eyes glinting. You found yours. I smiled, the hum in my chest pulsing with warmth. I think it found me. Days turned into weeks, and the library became my anchor. Its shelves a map of my new life. I volunteered 3 mornings a week, my hands steady, as I sorted books, my heart lighter with each patron I helped. Lucas visited again, his steps surer, his eyes brighter. We didn't talk about Andrew or Sarah, only about him, his dreams, his fears, his hope to be more than his parents' shadow. I listened, the hum in my chest soft but present, and I saw in him a spark of the same fire I'd found. One evening, as I walked home from the library, I felt it a shift in the air like the moment before rain. The hum in my chest flared, and I looked up to see a light, not a star, but a glow hovering above the street. It was the same light I'd seen after leaving Irene's faint but unmistakable. I followed it, my steps slow but certain, until I reached a small park, its benches empty, its trees whispering in the breeze. The light hovered over a stone fountain, its water glinting like glass, and I saw her, the guardian, her pale face clear, now her eyes burning with pride. She didn't speak, but her presence was a message. You are awake. I stood there, the hum in my chest, a song of triumph, and felt the last threads of Andrew's house fall away. The guardian faded her light, merging with the stars, and I knew the mystery was solved, the note, the envelope, the shadows. They weren't threats, but guides leading me to this moment. This freedom. I was no longer the woman who'd trusted too easily, who'd walked into a cage. I was May Jordan, awake and whole, and no one could take that from me. Back in my apartment, I sat at the kitchen table. The envelopes quiet, now their warmth gone. I opened the first one, pulling out the note one last time. The ink no longer shimmered, but the words were clear. They will take everything unless you wake. I smiled, folding it carefully and placed it in a drawer, not as a warning, but as a reminder. I didn't need it anymore. The hum in my chest was enough of fire that would never fade. I stood at the window, the city sprawling below its lights, a constellation of possibility. I thought of Lucas, of Judith, of Irene, of Leal, my new family bound not by blood, but by choice. I thought of the guardian, her eyes a mirror to my own. And I thought of myself not as the mother who'd lost her son, but as the woman who'd found her strength. I was free not because I'd escaped, but because I'd refused to be erased. To anyone reading this, anyone who feels forgotten, trapped, or betrayed, I say this, you are enough. The world may try to take everything, your name, your freedom, your fire, but it can't take what you refuse to give. Wake up like I did and claim your story. The shadows are watching, but they're not your enemies. They're your guides, waiting for you to see.